There are days that split time in half. Days after which nothing, not your city, not your country, not even your soul, feels quite the same. September 11th. Hurricane Katrina. The Fukushima meltdown. Disasters so vast they didn't just destroy buildings or systems. They stripped away illusion, exposing the core of everyone involved. Because in those first 60 minutes, you don't become broken. You simply reveal what was already weak or strong within you. Welcome to Guide to Reads, your space for stress-testing wisdom, not in quiet theory, but in fire. Today's book is not a manual. It's not motivation. It's a combat-tested blueprint. We're stepping into Conquering Crisis by Admiral William H. McRaven, a man who led elite SEAL units into the world's most dangerous zones and sat in the situation rooms where minutes decided lives. This isn't just about how to lead. It's about how to endure, how to stay calm when the air gets thin, how to see clearly when the fog of panic blinds everyone else. When disaster strikes, on the battlefield, in a boardroom, or at your kitchen table, you have two choices: fall into the chaos or master it. McRaven offers a method, sharpened over decades of real-world crisis, a 5-phase approach to turn paralysis into power. Assess what's real. Report with truth and urgency. Contain before it spreads. Shape the narrative before it shapes you. Manage with vision, stamina, and steel. Throughout this episode, we'll dive into those phases. We'll explore why first reports are often wrong, why secrecy can collapse morale, and how transparency becomes the first line of defense. But this isn't just for military leaders or CEOs. This is for anyone. Anyone who's been blindsided by loss, ambushed by change, or called upon to lead when the light has gone out. Because crisis isn't an exception, it's part of life, and as McRaven teaches, crisis will come, but catastrophe is a choice. Let's begin. 1. Step 1. Assess. Evaluate the crisis objectively. Some kinds of leadership glow in calm weather. They thrive in order, rely on clear plans, and reward steady hands. But crisis leadership? That's a different beast. It doesn't just ask if you're confident. It exposes what that confidence is made of. In crisis, every decision carries weight. Every delay carries risk. Every crack in your character becomes visible to your team, your opponents, and yourself. Admiral William McRaven knows crisis intimately. From SEAL team missions gone sideways to political backlash to moments of silence after real human loss, he's learned that the very first step to survival, the bedrock of everything that follows, is deceptively simple. Stop, look, and see what's actually happening. Assess. It's the first step, and often the most ignored. Why? Because under pressure, speed feels like strength. We move fast, talk fast, act fast, hoping action will equal control. But McRaven reminds us, speed without clarity is just chaos with boots on. History proves the point. December 1944. American generals believed the war in Europe was nearly over. Propaganda leaflets painted the Ardennes as peaceful, a place for rest. But in those same woods, a massive German force was gathering. And soon, that quiet place exploded into the Battle of the Bulge, a brutal, costly wake-up call. Why did it happen? Because first reports were wrong. Because leaders saw what they wanted to see. And by the time they accepted the truth, hundreds of lives had already been lost. That's why McRaven insists, assessing the truth means challenging assumptions, interrogating every fact, and, hardest of all, listening to dissent. In Afghanistan, McRaven faced this himself. An ambassador warned that SEAL night raids were alienating civilians. The admiral could have dismissed it. He could have protected his team's methods. But instead, he paused. He called in a council of colonels, not for loyalty, but for truth. Their conclusion? The ambassador was right, and McRaven, instead of defending ego, chose reform. He gave Afghan leaders veto power. He slowed the missions, added local oversight, and rebuilt trust, not through firepower, but through shared purpose. That's crisis leadership. Not denying the warning signs, but walking directly into them with open eyes. Because whether you're a general, a CEO, a teacher, or a parent, when pressure hits, your instinct will be to move, but your discipline must be to see. So before you speak, before you act, before you double down or dismiss the doubters, pause. Ask, what's real? What's noise? And what might I be refusing to see? In any crisis, you only get one first step. Make sure it's not just loud, but right. 2. Step 2. Report. Communicate clearly with stakeholders. There's a saying in military circles that cuts sharper than a blade. Bad news doesn't get better with age. It festers, it multiplies, and eventually it explodes. In the calm, truth feels like virtue. In crisis, truth becomes strategy. Because once you've assessed the landscape, once you've seen the storm for what it truly is, your next step is not to fix it, not yet. Your next step is to report it, clearly, promptly, and with unflinching honesty. It sounds simple, until the news is yours to deliver. In 2008, Admiral McRaven had just assumed command in Iraq. Only hours into his new post, the night shattered with grim news. A man, a relative of the Iraqi Prime Minister, had been accidentally killed during a U.S. raid. It was late. Exhaustion whispered, "Wait until morning." Panic suggested silence, but leadership demanded something else. "Call Petraeus. Now." The conversation was brief, tense, necessary, and later, General Petraeus would make something clear. "I didn't like the news, but I trusted you for telling me right away. Because in a crisis, time is trust. Every hour of silence invites suspicion. Every withheld detail grows heavier in hindsight. Leaders don't just lose control when they lie. They lose it when they hesitate, when they let truth rot behind closed doors. History offers its warnings. Consider the Iran-Contra affair. Faced with illegal arms sales and secret operations, President Reagan at first denied everything. The truth emerged slowly, painfully, turning a moment of misjudgment into a national scandal that scarred a presidency. Not because of what happened, but because of how it was hidden. McRaven learned that painful honesty can preserve the one thing no crisis leader can afford to lose: credibility. In 2010, following a successful airstrike in Afghanistan, local reporters accused his unit of killing civilians. The backlash was swift, angry, and false. But instead of hiding behind silence, McRaven did the unthinkable. He invited the skeptical journalists into his base. He showed them how his team operated, with precision, with caution, with an almost obsessive commitment to protecting civilian life. He didn't expect praise, but he earned something better: space for truth to breathe. Transparency didn't erase every doubt, but it cooled the outrage, and it opened a channel where there had only been walls. Because transparency isn't weakness. It's proof that you're not afraid of accountability, that your leadership isn't built on illusion, but on integrity, even when it hurts. So when it's your turn, when the weight of news rests on your shoulders, don't wait for a perfect spin. Don't cover, don't deflect. Step into the light, speak the truth, and do it before the silence begins to speak for you. 3. Step 3. Contain. Limit the crisis's spread or impact. In a war room beneath the blitzed skies of 1942 London, Winston Churchill leaned over a map, cane in hand, jaw clenched, his gaze locked not on cities, but on a ship. The Tirpitz, Germany's great battleship, hidden in Norway's icy fjords, was more than steel and firepower. To Churchill, it was the axis of risk. If she broke free into open waters, Britain's fragile control of the seas could snap, and with it, the fate of the war. Churchill didn't demand reassurances. He didn't ask for excuses. He wanted containment. And not just one idea, but 3, 5, 10. Every option, every angle, every risk mitigated. Commanders responded with audacity. Sink her. Sabotage her. Ram a ship into her only dock. Send mini-submarines under the ice. Act fast and from every direction. Eventually, the Tirpitz was neutralized, not by a perfect plan, but by a swarm of calculated strikes that limited her power before she could unleash it. This is containment in its purest form, and it's McRaven's third principle of crisis leadership. Why? Because if assessment is about seeing clearly and reporting is about speaking truth, then containment is about grabbing the wheel before the road disappears beneath you. Fast forward to 1990. Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait. The world reels. But President George H.W. Bush and his advisor Brent Scowcroft didn't wait. They didn't stall for perfect intelligence. They moved, troops deployed, alliances formed, sanctions drafted, air power positioned. They didn't know exactly what path would succeed. But by acting early, they preserved options. And in crisis, options are oxygen. Here's the brutal truth. Decision space shrinks with every minute of hesitation. Leaders who delay, hoping the storm will pass, often wake to find the roof already gone. Like in physics, entropy rules, unattended systems drift toward chaos, and crises left unmanaged multiply like wildfire. Take 2006, when McRaven's team tracked Algerian terrorist Mokhtar Belmokhtar. Some dismissed him as a petty smuggler. Action was delayed. By the time they realized the threat, Belmokhtar had orchestrated attacks across Africa, leaving over 150 dead in his wake. Containment doesn't wait for proof. It moves at the speed of threat. It buys you time. It creates breathing room. It puts the fire in a box before it jumps the fence. Because here's what containment really is. It's choosing action over paralysis. It's knowing that no plan is perfect, but most plans are better than none. It's widening the lanes of possibility so you're not trapped in one desperate decision later on. So when the crisis comes, and it will, don't wait for certainty. Act, limit the damage, buy time, and above all, make sure your next move is still yours to make. Step 4. Shape. Frame the narrative and strategy. He walked like a statue carved from discipline, shoulders squared, jaw cut sharp, eyes like steel. Even in his 60s, Major Dick Meadows looked like he could outrun time. In 1991, Admiral McRaven, then just a student at the Naval Postgraduate School, shared beers and war stories with the legendary Special Forces operator. But it wasn't a victory Meadows spoke of. It was a failure. Operation Eagle Claw, the ill-fated 1980 mission to rescue hostages from Tehran. As the evening stretched on, Meadows spoke the truth that hindsight had chiseled into him. We should have kept rehearsing. Again and again, if we had to. We rushed everything. And that, right there, was the fatal crack. Eagle Claw was bold, daring, and doomed. C-130 aircraft flying into Iran, helicopters from the USS Nimitz linking up in the desert, a cross-country infiltration, a midnight assault, a miracle extraction. But a sandstorm blew through the script. 3 helicopters turned back. 1 collided with a C-130 during refueling. 8 brave servicemen died before a single bullet was fired. The post-mortem was damning. Planning gaps, command confusion, lack of coordination, and above all, haste that suffocated preparation. Why? Because urgency had overtaken clarity, and the mission wasn't shaped. It was rushed. This is where step 4 comes into play, shape. Because once the initial flames are controlled, once the truth is reported and the chaos contained, you must resist the most dangerous voice in the room, the one that screams, "Move now, or lose everything." But if you move unshaped, you don't move, you fall. The military has its own proverb, "Don't rush to failure." And when McRaven planned the 2011 SEAL raid on Osama bin Laden's compound, he carried that lesson like armor. The pressure to act was immense. Political clocks were ticking. Satellites captured fleeting glimpses of the world's most wanted man. And yet, they waited. They rehearsed. They built a replica of the compound and drilled every possible scenario, including failure. So when that first helicopter crashed inside the courtyard walls, no one panicked. No one froze. They had already lived that moment 100 times in rehearsal. And that's the hidden power of shaping. You don't just respond to the crisis. You craft the future you want to meet. Shaping is the discipline of preemptive wisdom. It's balancing urgency with readiness. It's recognizing that sometimes slowing down is the fastest way to win, because fools rush in, but leaders rehearse. So when your crisis reaches the point of action, pause again. Sharpen the strategy. Rehearse the hits. Expect the crash. And shape the chaos before it shapes you. 5. Step 5. Manage. Execute and adapt the plan. Some crises arrive like thunder, loud, fast, undeniable, but most drag their boots across time. They don't explode, they grind. And if you're not careful, they'll grind you down with them. This is the hardest part of leadership under pressure, not just surviving the blast but managing the aftermath. Because a crisis rarely ends when the headlines fade. It lingers, quietly testing your discipline, your clarity, your morale. Let's turn the clock back to 205 BCE. Rome was reeling. Hannibal had carved across Italy, outthinking and outmaneuvering Roman generals at every turn. Enter Scipio Africanus, young and bold. But instead of chasing Hannibal across home soil, Scipio flipped the script. He sailed straight to Carthage. This move forced Hannibal to return home, overextended, underprepared. And at the Battle of Zama, Scipio crushed him, ending the Second Punic War. Why does this matter now? Because Scipio didn't just react to the crisis. He reshaped the battlefield. He dictated the terms. He managed the threat by changing the tempo. That's what McRaven teaches in his final phase. Step 5. Manage. It's not about fireworks, it's about pacing, sustaining energy, holding the line when everyone else is exhausted. Because when the adrenaline fades, it's your rhythm that keeps the mission alive. McRaven himself faced this slow burn test in 2017. As Chancellor of the University of Texas system, he watched a flagship initiative fall apart under public scrutiny. The press conference was brutal. He returned to his office heavy with failure, and then a knock. "Morale check," shouted a familiar voice. It was retired Army Major General Tony Cuccolo, delivering not just a message but a command: shake it off, get back in the fight. And McRaven did, but more importantly, he made sure his team did too. For days he walked the halls, smiling, asking about families, telling jokes, talking football. He didn't fake it, he led it. Because in a crisis, morale is oxygen. And as Napoleon once said, morale is worth more than skill, more than numbers, more than any battlefield advantage. The truth is this: crisis doesn't just test your strategy, it tests your spirit. You can win the opening battles, but if you can't manage the long grind, the victory slips away. So what does managing a crisis mean? It means protecting the energy of your team, monitoring your own tone and resilience, catching secondary fires before they spark, moving slow when the instinct is to panic, holding confidence without arrogance, and showing up over and over even when the storm won't end, because firefights win moments. But management wins endurance, and if leadership under pressure is a test of character, this is the part where your true strength is revealed. Final summary. When a storm breaks, we imagine it all happens in an instant: a flash, a rupture, a collapse. But real crises unfold slowly. And more often than not, they reveal us, not in how we act when things fall apart, but in how we prepare, how we endure, and how we lead when the weight refuses to lift. Through these 5 steps: assess, report, contain, shape, manage. McRaven doesn't give us a playbook for panic. He offers us a blueprint for clarity, for courage, for calm under fire. Because as we've seen, it's not the loudest leader who survives the crisis, but the one who listens first. Not the one who hides the truth, but the one who faces it. Not the one who rushes to fix everything, but the one who shapes the storm with patience and resolve. And above all, it's the leader who understands that managing the aftermath is just as vital as responding to the first shock. Whether you're holding a team together, navigating a business failure, or simply guiding your own family through uncertainty, these lessons aren't just for generals, they're for all of us. In crisis, you don't need to be fearless. You need to be anchored, firm, clear-eyed, and willing to move forward, step by step, even through the fog. Thank you for joining me on this powerful journey through conquering crisis. If this episode offered you clarity, courage, or simply the language to face the storms in your own life, don't forget to share it with someone who may need it too. And if you'd like to walk with us through more books of wisdom and leadership, subscribe to Guide to Reads, where we don't just tell stories, we light the path forward. Until next time, stay steady, stay strong, and lead well.